Hello, Justin here for another video. And this one I'm going to talk about how I managed to work 3 different jobs while doing Western Governors and completing my program in less than 6 months, as most of you know who have watched my videos before. So just some context is that I was working a part-time job when I first started Western Governors, which I think was actually very useful because I was able to get a lot done within that first couple months. That part-time job was 25 hours a week, and the 25 hours a week were designed in a way that I could organize my schedule, and therefore I could work on Western Governors when I wanted to as well. But subsequent to that, I was actually doing 3 different jobs. So I was teaching at a university 2 different courses, and then I was working my part-time job 25 hours a week, and then I was also working on a freelance project that was eating up a lot of my time. Now, this became very problematic, especially while I was doing courses at Western Governors that became harder and harder in the master's program because I was in the Master's of Curriculum and Instruction. And the courses became harder because they weren't really in my area of expertise, and I wasn't able to rely on my competence, prior knowledge in those courses like I was able to in the first courses that I started the program with. So I have kind of 4 main strategies that I used, and these are just high-level strategies. So they're not going to be super specific, but I'm going to give a few examples to make it more clear. But the first one is that I got really good at figuring out ways to minimize the workload, because my whole idea was, how can I work less? I didn't want to work so much that I was overwhelming myself, because I was only designating 2 days a week to work on Western Governors, and that was primarily a Saturday as well as part of another weekend day or an evening. So how was I able to minimize my workload? Well, first of all, I went for the performance assessment, I went directly to the source of the rubric, what was expected of me, and I made note of exactly what I needed to know, and I decided that I was not going to become an expert at that, because that is not the goal of Western Governors, but my goal was to be competent enough that I could write about it. And so what I did was I inundated myself with videos, because I could watch videos at 2-point speed, which is hard for some people that aren't used to that, but even 1.5 speed is actually pretty good. And I would watch a bunch of videos on the topics, whether they were kind of as part of the resources Western Governors offered, but actually a lot of the time I use YouTube videos, and the idea was just to kind of like throw information at me quickly, because if I was able to get a good sense of that information quickly, then I could start to create connections between those concepts as well as what I was supposed to be writing about specifically, which is generally about my own experience within the Teachers College. And I can imagine doing this for even objective assessments would be good too. So I'm very visual, and so inundating myself with this was almost like getting some of the wiring in my brain about these topics going, because if I had never heard of these topics before, it took a lot of energy to read about it and to really think about it. So to hear it from somebody who explained it in visuals as well as different demonstrations was really important. And that really helped minimize my workload, because I wasn't going into the textbook and reading every single chapter. From there, I went directly to the source in the chapter where that information was. I wasn't going to read the whole chapter. I was only going to read what I had to write about. So for example, if I had to write about a certain developmental theory on, let's say, Erikson's developmental theory in educational psychology, that was a course I took, then I would go right to that chapter, those pages, and I wouldn't even read all of them. What I would do is read the summary, and then what I would do is I would go to the pages and then kind of pick up information that I wasn't clear about. From there, I was constantly making notes very quickly. I wasn't like stopping and really like thinking about it. I was just making notes about what stood out to me in those theories, because again, I didn't have to write about everything. I only had to write about certain things. So I wrote kind of notes very quickly about like what resonated, what didn't resonate, and kind of what I felt like the focus of my paper was going to be. Now, the second strategy is using the resources very strategically, the resources that they have. And I've already talked about kind of using the textbook, but only looking at the chapters that are most important. But the main resources are your mentor and your instructors. So I started to realize that the instructors are willing to actually give you that information. They're not willing to just give it to you right off the bat, but if you're going to have a dialogue and share your understanding with them by saying, okay, this is what I know and this is what I don't know, and this is where I'm struggling, they want to help you unpack that. And a lot of the times my instructors would unpack it with me in a way where it would reveal some of the answers to my performance assessments, as well as some of like the main challenges with that course content. And they would just walk me through it. And the nice thing about a good instructor is they will give you examples. So when you don't understand it, they will just spell it out for you in different multiple examples. So my instructor, I had multiple instructors, but my main instructor that I worked with for 4 courses, she constantly tried to relate it to my own experience. So she said, okay, you're teaching these types of courses. So in these courses, this is how it might show up in the course curriculum. This theory might show up like this. And she would kind of frame it for me. And then she would ask me questions about how to understand that further. And it would really help me process that. So basically, my sense is touch base with those instructors and try to get as much information from them. They're going to basically feed it to you if you are able to kind of work with them through that content. They don't want to just tell you it off the bat. They want to know that you're trying. So what I would do is if I was writing a paper, I would book an appointment kind of in that week with my instructor, and I would actually book a second appointment kind of a few days after that, because I would start writing right away. And then if I was kind of writing and then I ran into kind of a roadblock, I knew I had another appointment booked with that instructor a few days later, and that they could kind of untangle that situation or that writing block for me. So another strategy I had is to set timelines at deadlines. So by timeline, I just mean like in the week, I had a timeline of when I was going to get things done. I knew no matter what, I had to work on a Saturday and I had to get something done. It wasn't a matter of, oh, if I get it done, great. If I don't, oh, that's too bad. It was like something's going to get done. So even if I didn't get a full performance assessment done, I got enough of it done so I knew I could finish it the next day. And having that timeline made me really efficient because I wasn't trying to like, dilly-dally and try to figure out how to motivate myself. It's like, okay, I have this Saturday. I have like 6 hours, sometimes less, sometimes more. I'm going to go. And having that timeline in the week was really important. And that essentially was a deadline as well. By the Sunday, I knew I was submitting no matter what. I would do anything to submit, meaning if I normally go to groceries on that Sunday, you know what? I'm postponing that. I'm going to go for groceries later in that day. Maybe I'll push it to the Monday because I needed to submit on the Sunday. So I knew that I was very dedicated, and having those deadlines and really sticking to them and proving to yourself that you can stick to them is actually what's going to keep you going in the accelerated path or on the accelerated path, because there's going to be times where you don't want to get things done, but you just know that you've created this good habit for yourself to get things done in the week, and it's going to happen. So my 4th strategy is that I took time off. And I know that maybe sounds counterproductive because when you're, trying to be busy and trying to get things done, you might be thinking to yourself, I need to constantly be working. But when you start to work too much, you start to burn out. And I made a video about that and why that becomes problematic and how I experienced it in my work life, not necessarily my WGU life. But you do not want to burn out. When you start to burn out, you are going to also start to have a whole host of negative thoughts around wanting to postpone your program, sometimes quit your program, how much you hate your program, how you'll never finish this, how you're going to waste all your money. You're going to have all of these negative thoughts, and those thoughts are going to become a new barrier for you. And then you're going to have to work through that barrier. So if you don't take time out from WGU or anything in your life, then you're going to probably burn out. So what I say is, make sure you have times during the week where you're doing non-work or non-activity. And that doesn't mean, doing your day job or, cooking dinner. I mean, it means doing things that really make you feel at ease. So for me, like I've talked about this before, but I have different meditation practices. I do lots of walking, lots of basically just resting. Like I do a lot of just lounging. I call it walrusing, where I'm just like literally laying in my bed doing nothing. And that helps me regain my energy, but also it just makes me feel like I'm not always working. And I think when I'm not working, then there's a moment after that where I'm like, you know what, hey, I want to start working on stuff. But, you know, you have to make sure to always kind of keep it in balance and keep yourself in check, because you don't want to do it so much where you just become so demotivated that you're not going to get yourself back in gear again. So have times during the week where you're not going to be working, have times during the week where you're going to be working intensely, and also have times where you are going to just get inspired to work on things. So it might not be you necessarily working and writing on your papers or studying, but you know, watching videos from WGU students, or watching videos of people who are like doing lots in their life and they're being very productive, and or like, you know, I used to watch videos of people cleaning their homes. Like, I know it sounds so strange, but there's tons of videos on YouTube of people just being productive, and for some reason that really motivated me. So I mean, I wouldn't necessarily do that in my downtime. That would be kind of me coming out of my downtime wanting to get energized and feel motivated. So figure out what works for you. For some people, that's just calling up a friend and talking about what they're going to write about in their paper and getting kind of excited about it. I mean, if you're always dreading a paper, it's going to be very hard to do this program with ease, or do your program, right? And when it comes to objective assessment, same thing. Talk about the course content with a friend, just to kind of get your wheels going in your head where like, hey, this is interesting. This is stuff that could be useful. Even if it's an American history course and that's not your major, there's a lot of things there that you can learn from and can make your worldview really interesting and rich. But if you employ these different strategies, such as, you know, trying to minimize the workload and being really efficient with your time, using your resources effectively, setting timelines, taking time off, getting inspired, I think you're going to have a lot more ease within the program and just a lot more enjoyment in what you're doing. If you like these kind of videos, subscribe. I tend to make them once every couple of weeks or so, and I hope to kind of build more resources that are going to be useful for you, WGU related or grad school related, and I will see you in the next video.